everyone. Wait a minute, pause. Wait a minute. Are y'all clapping for me, the dress, or this thing on my head? All three? Okay, we're good. We're good. Can we get a round of applause for our amazing musician, Sydney Shepherd? My name is Angelica Lindsey-Ali, and I'm your host for this evening. I'm so excited to be back here in New York City. Welcome, everyone, to the Church of St. Anne. You can clap for yourself. This is one of my favorite shows of the year for the Moth because this is an opportunity to honor the members, the people who really keep the Moth running. You know, at Moth shows, at Moth Story Slams, we create spontaneous community, right? We create family out of strangers, but you guys are already family. So we're gonna take a family photo. It's been a long time. This is the first live Mainstage since February 2020. It's nice to see people again, or at least fractions thereof. Your eyes and like chins, at least, or your second or third chin. It's nice to see. So if you can take out your phone, and then you know the drill. You're gonna turn on your flashlight, yeah? There we go. Oh, so we're gonna take a family photo, all right? Beautiful. Let's get people on the side. I don't know how Beyonce does it. All right. Beautiful. So now you're going to turn your phones off and put them away. There's no flash photography. We want you to focus on the stories. We have an amazing lineup of storytellers this evening, and we want you to be fully engaged in the experience. So this is our annual Moth member show in celebration of the members whose generous support make the core programming of the Moth possible. The Moth is a standalone nonprofit organization, and it is through your support that we're able to provide the programming that we do. So in addition to shows like the Mainstage, the monthly Story Slams, we also have the Moth Education Program for high school students and educators, and the Community Program to empower folks who are too often left at the fringe of mainstream media. Like currently and formerly incarcerated individuals, we empower them to share their own stories. These stories make their way onto the Peabody Award-winning Moth Radio Hour. Can we give it up for the... Okay. Indulge me for a moment. I have been listening to the Moth since the Moth started. And it's always a surreal experience to just imagine that I'm standing in New York City on a Moth stage, hosting a Moth main stage. This is the power of storytelling. And storytelling is such an accessible art form. Every person, man, woman, child, human being, whatever you are, whoever you are, whatever language you speak, wherever you come from, we all have a good story inside of us. And the Moth brings that type of authentic, person-to-person storytelling directly to us. So once again, for the Moth organization. And if you're not a member, after that impassioned speech I just gave, you can go to your program and scan the QR code, or you can text Moth member, all one word, to 71777. Moth member to 71777, and you can take advantage of Moth member benefits, including learning about events like this before everybody else does. Now, if you've never been to the Moth before, the Moth is true stories told live. There are no notes. I'm the only one who gets to have notes. Nobody else gets to have notes. These are stories told from real human experience. It's not comedy, it's not stand-up, we don't read, we just share stories from the heart. Now, you're gonna hear 5 stories tonight, 3 stories at the first half, 2 stories in the second half. Our stories tonight are between 10-ish to 12 minutes long, and Sydney here is also our timekeeper. So at the 10-minute mark, you're going to hear this tone. That's so sweet. But then if you get to 12, you're going to hear... Can you play that one more time? That sounds like a jazzy Jaws. I love that. But you don't want to get to that 10 or 12-minute mark. These stories have all been curated and workshopped, and we really hope that you enjoy them tonight. So Sydney's going to play if it runs over time, but I don't think we're going to, and I think the stories that you're going to hear tonight are really going to pierce your heart, because the theme of tonight is Terra, Firma, really finding our balance again, regaining some sense of groundedness. And we've been through the last, 2 years of global calamity and pandemic, public health crises, wars, political strife all over the world. So this is a time for us to come back together in the greatest city in the United States. Don't tell my mama I said that, but because we're from Detroit, but we're in the greatest city, and this is an opportunity for us to come back together. So you're going to hear stories that will make you laugh, stories that will make you think, but most of all, we want stories that will touch your heart. So does that sound good to everybody? All right. All right. So instead of reading the bios, which are in your programs, we are going to introduce each storyteller by way of a question. So I asked each storyteller this question, and they gave me their answer. So you can read their bios, and you really should read their bios because all of the bios are really impressive. But these questions are also super fun. So the question we asked them is, tell us about a time you put your foot down. And our first storyteller said, I used to eat brownies and a pint of ice cream every night. I put my foot down when I stopped for a week until I discovered vegan ice cream. Please welcome to the stage, Gbenga Akinnagbe.
I am a wee man, thank you. I love my bike. I take my bike with me everywhere. I live in Brooklyn. It's the best way to get around the city. I love my bike so much, I travel with it. I have a bike case. I put my bike in the bike case. I check it in like luggage. It is luggage. And on this particular day, I'm in Los Angeles for a week of meetings. And I have a meeting at Warner Brothers Studios that I'm very excited about. And I check my GPS, and it says 40 minutes to get there. No problem. I jump on my bike, and I head out, following my GPS. My GPS then tells me I need to turn off-road to get to where I'm going. I get off my bike, I start to walk it onto the dirt path, and the moment I step onto the dirt path, my GPS goes out. No problem. I know the direction in which I need to go. I'll eventually get to Warner Brothers, right? So I keep going. The path starts meandering, disappearing, reappearing. It's overgrown. I'm ducking bushes, there's rocks and roots. And it occurs to me that this path is not actually a path, but a dried out creek bed. And I've been following it for about 5 minutes. And I'm like, well, okay, this is a little bump in the road, but I know the direction in which I'm going. Warner Brothers is somewhere on that side. I'll just keep going. And then I will find a path that will take me there. So I continue to go on. Eventually, the ground in front of me starts to incline into a little hill, and I'm walking my bike up this hill. The hill gets more and more steep, and I find that I have to start to use my hands to climb this hill. And I'm like, that's cool. I'm pretty rugged. I can do this. I can use my hands to climb this hill and take my bike with me, no problem. And as I continue on, I find that I have to now use my entire body to climb this hill. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. Like Warner Brothers is in that direction. I'll get there, and this is well worth it. My bike is light, no problem. I continue to go up this hill, and then I realize I'm getting tired. The sun is baking down on me. I'm higher and higher on this hill, and for a second, I consider going back until I turn around and I look down and I'm struck with vertigo. I get an idea of just how high I am right now on this hill. I continue to go up. I'm like, because I realize it's more dangerous to go down than it is to go up, even though I'm not at this point not quite sure where I'm going. So as the sun continues to bake down on me, I decide that I should probably stop and rest because I'm getting more and more tired, and I might just fall off this hill. So I seek out a patch where I can wedge myself, because this hill's very steep. So I wedge myself in with my foot into a rock and my other foot into another rock. I take my bike and I wedge it between some bushes, and I grab one bush, and it comes right out of the ground. And I'm like, oh, okay. I start to laugh at how ridiculous this all is, because I got up this morning thinking I'm going to a meeting at Warner Brothers. That's all I'm trying to do today. It's still morning. That's all I'm trying to do. But I then wedge both hands into other crevices, and I use what strength I have to hold myself onto the side of this hill. And it occurs to me that it's time I should be honest with myself, and that this is not a hill but a mountain. And I'm for some reason I've accidentally started to climb this mountain. And I'm thinking now just how ridiculous this is, because I'm in Los Angeles, the middle of Los Angeles. I did not expect to find a mountain and myself on it. And then I start to think, there's a very good chance I'm not going to make it out of here. I look down, and I realize how high I am, and then I start to contemplate the choices I've made thus far. And I start to think, I probably might need to get help, because I don't know where I am. I don't have water. I'm very tired, and the sun is getting stronger. And so I take out my cell phone. And of course, my cell phone has 5% energy and 1 bar. And I'm thinking, well, who am I going to text? Everyone in New York, well, they're in New York. And everyone in LA that I know, I can't even get my friends in LA to come pick me up at the airport, let alone find me on some random mountain in Los Angeles. So I was like, I'm not even going to try. I could get out one text. I don't know if I have enough energy to even receive one. So I'm like, all right, let me try to figure this out. And just then, I look up, and across from me, on the other mountain facing the mountain I am on, is a ridge, and I see a man, and he's just been staring at me. And I'm like, and it's so wild and serene, because his dogs are just running around playing, and I'm like, they're having, it was such a beautiful picture, and I felt such tragedy and fear, and I'm like, the irony was not lost on me, and all I wanted to do was scream out to this guy for help, and I knew that, one, he would not hear me, and two, there was very little he could do to help me, and so I decided I might have to just go on, and I realized that I'm heavy, I've got a lot of stuff on me, and maybe if I lighten my load, this might be easier, and so I turn and I look at my bike, and I'm like, maybe I should leave my bike. No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I would never leave you. You would never leave me. I would never leave you. We're getting out of this thing alive. And so I grab my bike, and because I have a book bag, I can't just put my bike on my back. I have to crawl about 2 feet at a time, then reach back and pull my bike each time. I crawl another 2 feet, reach back and pull my bike. I'm dragging my bike up the mountain, across bushes and rocks, watching my beautiful machine get beat up, but I will not leave my bike behind. And so I continue up, and I see something above me, and it looks like an antenna. And I know that antennas are usually on some sort of platform, some sort of firm ground, and maybe if I get up there, I might be able to save myself. I don't know what's up there, but at least right now I have hope. So I keep climbing, and I crawl over the edge of this mountain onto where this antenna is, and right by the antenna is a path, and I am shaking. I'm so excited. My face is covered in mountain dust, my eyes, the sweat all over, my helmet's askew. I look very disheveled. And I look up, and there is a woman walking towards me. This all really happened, by the way. And she's walking towards me, and I'm thinking, I don't want to scare this woman, but I really need her help. And so I wipe my face, I straighten out my helmet, I tell my bike, look, we've made it this far, keep calm, we're gonna get some help. And so I walk towards her, and she's approaching me, I'm approaching her, we're about 10 feet from each other, when at the same time we say to each other, do you know how to get off of this mountain? I'm like, no, I thought you would tell me. I don't know where I am. I'm so lost. Please help me. She's like, well, what about the way you just came, that path? I said, I didn't come from that path. I climbed off this mountainside. I don't know what's going on. I was like, what about you? What's back where you came from? She's like, well, we can go back where I came from and see if we can find our way. I'm like, okay, let's do that, please. So she turns around and we walk back to where she came, and we run into a group of hikers. Now, they were real hikers. The two of us, we were just like lost people in the wilderness on the edge of life and death. And so they help her. They point her in the direction in which she needs to go, and they tell me in the direction I need to go. So we start walking, me and the hikers. I'm just thinking in my head, oh my God, how ridiculous my life is this morning. And then all of a sudden I hear someone say, are you the guy from The Wire? Yes, I was very fortunate to be part of that show. I mean, yeah, you can watch it several times and you get something different from it every time. You were right, yes. And then his friend says, do you have any acting advice? I was like, I mean, well, theater is good. I like theater. I do theater. I started in theater, and it's part of my career. I mean, you might want to try, theater. And in my mind, I'm just thinking, I just need to get to this meeting. I just need to get off this mountain. And they get me to a road, and I ride my bike down this road, and I hit Barham Boulevard. And I know Barham Boulevard. I recognize it. Not only do I recognize it, Warner Brothers is on Barham Boulevard. And it's 3 blocks ahead of me. And I see it. And I'm walking towards it. Because at this point, I just want to walk in silence with my bike. I can't even ride it. We're just walking, trying to figure out what happened to us. And so I'm walking towards Warner Brothers. And I get a phone call. And it's the assistant in my manager's office who's telling me that they want to cancel the meeting for the day and reschedule to have it later that afternoon in Hollywood, back on the other side of the mountain. I lose it. I start laughing uncontrollably. I'm sure there were a lot of tears. I'm just that guy on the side of the road in LA, sun-baked, just laughing at the sun. And to this day, I'm not quite sure how I ended up on that mountain or what mountain it was. But I do know that I pay attention to the little things now. All the little things, like GPS instructions. Whether they're the walking GPS instructions or the biking GPS instructions. I pay attention to how much weight is in my book bag before I head out on the day, whether I have water. I pay so much attention. I probably pay too much attention because you never know when the wrong choice might just end you up making life or death decisions on the side of a mountain. Thank you.
That was Gbenga Akinnagbe. So when Gbenga walked into rehearsal, I was like, I know him. I think we went to high school together. And it took me a minute to realize, and I went home. I was like, that's the dude that was trying to beat up Bow Wow in Lottery Ticket. Like, he's a brilliant actor. He's a theater actor. He's acted in film. But I feel like that Warner Brothers meeting should be about the next action flick. And it can be called Gbenga and the Bike at the Edge of Mankind, right? Like, I will watch that. I was rooting for the bike. I was like, please don't leave Bikey behind. That's what I call your bike, Bikey. Please don't leave it behind. That was an amazing story. Our next storyteller, when I asked her, tell us about a time that you put your foot down, she said, I put my foot down in a manhole and fell in chest deep. Please welcome to the stage, Maniza Naqvi.
So, back in December 2016, I was sitting in my office at the World Bank in Washington, D.C., feeling unmoored, disheartened. Every day, I walk through Lafayette Park in front of the White House to get to my work. But lately, the noise has been so loud and ugly about the Muslim ban and building a wall, I'm beginning to panic. And what's a person like me even supposed to do about this? And why am I even here? I came from Pakistan 30 years ago for my job. And my job, I love it. I absolutely love it. I get to work with governments and local governments and villages to build social safety nets, to reduce poverty. Well, that's the idea. I get to design and supervise projects. I don't actually do anything with my own hands, but I'm on the ground a lot in many different countries, and I travel a lot. And as if flying wasn't fun enough while being Muslim, they're going to ban me too? I feel scattered all over the map. My writing helps to ground me, but still, I feel like I need a change. I need someone to throw me a lifeline. That day, while I'm sitting at my desk munching a salad at lunchtime, an article pops up in my newsfeed. It's about one of the oldest bookshops in Karachi, Pakistan. Pioneer Book House. Never heard of it. But a long time ago, for a short while, I lived and worked in Karachi. I had a car of my own, and I explored the whole city, particularly the old part of the city, which has these beautiful buildings, decaying, but beautiful to me. They're in this Indo-Saracen European architectural style. You know, I think I've lived more in my imagination in Karachi than I have in reality. But isn't that the way it is about the places you leave behind? They're more magical in memory. Anyways, this article says that Pioneer Book House, circa 1945, is about to be sold, and the owner, Zafar Hussain, just wants to sell the property. He says no one buys books. There's a photograph of the bookshop in the article, and I look at it, and I feel like I'm fusing with the photograph. There's even a sound in my head, like a wah. And I feel like, oh my God, this is one of those old, beautiful buildings. And what would happen if all the bookshops in the world start to close down? Hate is going to rise. And I think, I can do this. I can save a bookshop. And in this moment, I think the universe is throwing me a lifeline. And the next thing I know, I've taken all my accumulated leave, and I'm on a flight to Karachi. I've catapulted myself from the heart of Washington, D.C. to the heart of old Karachi, and now I'm standing outside Pioneer Book House in the clattering, clanging, busy bazaar of Karachi, and I'm looking into the shop, and I can see that inside the shop it's dark, and there's a man sitting hunched over. He's bearded. He looks to me like he's despairing. I ask him if I can come in. He nods. I go in and sit next to him. This is Zafar Sahab. I introduce myself as a writer. I tell him I've read this article and I want to help him save his bookshop, but he's not buying it. He wants to sell the shop. He says he has a family to take care of. He has a wife, he has 4 children, he has a mother, he has a brother. He says no one buys books. He says his grandfather began this shop 71 years ago. He says now someone will buy this bookshop and turn it into a biryani shop or a mobile phone shop, because biryani sells and mobile phones sell and nobody buys books. I look around me. There are wires hanging from the ceiling. In one corner, there's a broken fan and a broken chair. In another corner, there's 2 car doors dented and car tires, car parts. And there are books spilling out of bookshelves, covered in 1-inch thick dust and grime. And there's crumpled newspaper lying in heaps and heaps all over the floor. And this tiny little bookshop is lined by bookshelves. Zafar Sahab says, these are made of teak. And when I ooh and ah, he says, well, if you think this is beautiful, wait till you see the upstairs. And he points to the stairs in the back. I go up the stairs, and suddenly, I'm in this large, cavernous space of 3 huge rooms lying in the dark. And the condition here is like the bookshop downstairs, only worse. But it appears magical to me. It's a quiet space, a silent space, a waiting space. I feel like it's a waiting for me kind of a space. And in the back room, there's a gigantic table just groaning under piles of books and piles of pamphlets and piles of cloth and piles of paper, all covered in dust. And I think this room could be a book reading room, and that one could be an art gallery. And I go rushing downstairs, and I sit next to Zafar Sahab, and I say, Zafar Sahab, you might think you're invisible. You might think no one sees you or sees your shop here. But just think what would happen if all the bookshops closed down. Something about my impassioned plea moves him, apparently, because he agrees for me to come back the next day and talk to him some more. So I go back the next day, and the one after that, and the one after that, until Zafar Sahab relents and agrees for me to sort out his whole shop and show him that it can work as a bookshop. Oh, I'm just overjoyed. I'm so appreciative and grateful for his kindness, for his generosity, for his indulging me this way, to let me into his shop in this manner. That night, I email back to Washington, D.C., and request permission to telecommute. And when it's granted, the next day, I show up at Pioneer Book House with brooms and dusters in hand and ask Zafar Sahab which books, which bookshelves, and which floors I can start cleaning. And as I just do nothing without his permission. And as soon as it's granted, I get started, dusting and cleaning and sorting. And as I do this, I talk and talk and talk and talk, while Zafar Sahab sits at first, staring out at the street glumly. But I ask him 100 questions about the Pioneer Book House's history, the history of his family, the history of the city, until he finally melts down and starts answering my questions. And as he talks and as I clean and sweep, I begin to realize and appreciate even more the troubles that Karachi has gone through, the troubles this city has faced. There's a war going on in Afghanistan next door, and the fallout has been on this city. It's a wonder that shopkeepers have been able to keep their shops open, let alone hold on to their properties. And there's so much distrust. And I know, I must seem like an oddity here, a woman of my background, sweeping and dusting and cleaning in the bazaar. I would have seemed like an oddity under any circumstance. But I just ignore that and ratchet up my clueless, can-do spirit. I'm going for endearing. Even so, one day, a shopkeeper in the neighborhood comes in, points a finger at me, and says, "American agent, FBI." I'm so startled. FBI, I say? Wouldn't CIA make more sense here? Everybody in the shop bursts out laughing. In the coming days, I make friends with the shopkeeper and other shopkeepers as well, and street vendors, and a traffic cop or two. Every day, at least 2 people come in to have lunch with Zafar Sahab, and his son comes in after college as well. And everybody eats out of a communal plate, so that if there are 4 hands dipping into the plate, the 5th is mine. And this means the world to me. I feel so welcomed, so appreciated, so much like I matter here, and I'm getting to do things with my own hands. And as I sweep and dust and clean in the shop, I feel like I'm spinning and dancing in the bazaar. I mean, what could be better than this? I'm a world banker by night and a sweeper in a bookshop by day. But I know I could show up here tomorrow and Zafar Saab could tell me that he sold his property and that Pioneer Book House is destined to become the good luck biryani shop. But until that happens, I'm going to try my darndest to keep this shop open. It takes me about 20 days to sort through the whole shop. Every day I'm covered with dust and grime from the top of my head to the soles of my feet. But I want to do everything with my own hands. I'm lifting loads and loads of bags filled with paper and books that need to be discarded and sent to the recycler. But I can't do everything myself. I need to get an electrician, for example, to fix the wiring and to put in new lights and new lamps. I get these embroidered caps from the bazaar next door to put in between the books in the bookshelves. I get these glass bottles, green, red, yellow, blue, from the old bottles bazaar nearby to put in a glass shelf in the window to catch the light. I get chairs to put around the reading table. And those car parts, Zafar Saab never lets me throw those out. But shoved in the corner under the right light, modern art? But when the lights go on, oh, when the lights go on, the place is bathed in golden light. It has such great bones. It looks so beautiful. Even Zafar Saab is smiling, and he's amazed. And I think maybe that's all it takes for someone to come in and turn the lights back on. In the coming days, we plan to have a book reading. At least 25 people will come. We plan it down to the snacks and the tea we are going to serve. And I scrub the floors as much as I can upstairs, and I scrub them until I learn this important lesson, that dust is a reality in Karachi. I can dust and clean all I want, and it's going to come back. When the book reading begins, I ask Zafar Saab to sit and enjoy the guests in his house and to enjoy the book reading. I tell him I'll go downstairs and mind the shop with his son. I go downstairs and I sit there looking out at the street. And in this moment, I feel so overwhelmed. What could be better than this? The house is full of people. There's a book reading going on here for the first time. And I think, you know, this boat might be afloat. This bookshop stands a chance. It's been 5 years, and Pioneer Book House's doors are still open. And the bookshop is in the hands of the family that has owned it for 76 years now. And me? I feel like all my scattered parts came together when the noise and ugliness got so loud, I focused in on a point of beauty. You know, I may have rescued a bookshop, but I'm pretty sure the bookshop rescued me.
That was Maniza Naqvi. That was gorgeous storytelling. I feel like for the last few minutes, we were transported from a beautiful church in Brooklyn to a historic but dusty bookshop in Karachi. And that's the power of storytelling. We met Maniza through the Moth pitch line, and you can visit themoth.org to find out details about how you can pitch a story of your own. And I neglected at the top of the show to mention that there are people from the Moth family, Moth members and supporters, joining us virtually from all over the world. So if you're joining us virtually, welcome, and thank you for your support. When I asked our next storyteller, tell us about a time you put your foot down, she said, "My whole family still lives in the Philadelphia area. I put my foot down when I left the state and didn't bring my Philly accent with me." Please welcome to the stage Francine Lobis Wheeler.
On December 25th, 2012, it was Christmas morning, about 11 in the morning. We just opened presents, and I turned to my husband, David, and I said, I can't sleep. I can't eat. I can't breathe. And he said, honey, just try to relax, go lay down. And I said, no, I can't. I can't. And I was like that because 11 days before that, on December 14th, 2012, our son Ben was murdered in his first grade classroom at Sandy Hook Elementary School. So that Christmas morning, I really couldn't do anything. But David, my husband, he convinced me to go lay down, so I did. And I was so exhausted that I immediately fell asleep. And as soon as I was asleep, I looked to the side of the bed, and there was Ben. He didn't say anything. He just opened the palm of my hand. He kissed it. He closed the palm of my hand. And I woke up. And I ran to David, and I said, oh my gosh, Dee, Ben came to me. And he kissed my hand, and I know why. And he said, why? And I said, because of the book I used to read to him, The Kissing Hand, where the mother raccoon, she kisses her son Chester's hand when he's scared to go to school. And she says, just know that my love for you is always there. And so that's what Ben gave me that day. So then after that, I was asking him to come back. Please come back. Show me another sign. Please come visit me. Please, please, please. I miss you so much. And sure enough, a couple weeks later, he did. He came back in another dream. And in this dream, I was standing in the second floor of an elevator, and I went to the first floor, and then I went to the basement, and the doors opened. And there was Ben. And he said, Mommy, you made it. I'm so glad. And we hugged and we kissed. And I said, I love you. And he said, I love you. And it was real. And he said, but Mama, I'm happy, but we're really worried about you. Don't let them trademark you. Now, when Ben was alive, he wanted to be smart like his big brother Nate, and he would often use these very long words to try and sound smart, but sometimes the words didn't always match the sentence. And so in the dream, I said to him, are you sure you mean trademark? And he said it again. Don't let them trademark you, Mama. And then I woke up. And I told everybody about the dream. What do you think he meant by trademark? Do you think he meant Sandy Hook shooting? What was it? What did he mean? What did he mean? And in the meantime that all this is going on, when you lose somebody that traumatically, that violently, that suddenly, you go back and you rethink things over and over and over again. And I kept thinking about the last day of his life over and over and over again in my head. And it was an interesting morning because I was getting Nate and Ben ready for school, and I suddenly realized that Nate had book club. And I said, oh my gosh, guys, I forgot it. We got to drop off Nate first. All right, get your stuff together. We got to move. And I'm trying to clean up, and I'm stacking the dishwasher, and Benny comes over to me, and he says, Mama, what does forgiveness mean? And I was like, oh, Ben, why are you asking me this right now? Come on, we got to go. And he said, no, Mommy. What is forgiveness? And I said, I don't know, Ben. It's like when you do something wrong and the other person forgets about it. Now, come on, we got to go. So I pack him up, we get in the car, we drop off Nate, and I say to Ben, okay, Ben, you want to go back home and wait for the bus? Or do you want to go to Starbucks for a treat? And he said, Starbucks. So we went to Starbucks, and he ordered a chocolate milk. I used to tell the story and said hot chocolate, but then I found the receipt. It was chocolate milk, and we sat down, and he said, "You know what, Mama? I'm going to be an architect when I grow up." And I said, "Wow, Ben, that's amazing." And he said, "No, wait. I'm going to be an architect and a paleontologist because Nate's going to be a paleontologist, and I have to do everything Nate does." And I said, "Well, you're your own person, Ben. You don't have to do whatever your brother does." And he said, "Oh, no, I'm always going to be with Nate. I love Nate. And I love you, Mommy." And I said, "I love you too. It's so nice to just be here, just the two of us. We never get that chance to do that." And then he said, "Mommy, can I have your iPhone?" So I gave him the iPhone. And a couple minutes later, I took him to school, and a half hour later, he was dead. So I kept reliving that over and over and over. Did it happen? Was it that special? Did we really say "I love you" to one another? What was that? And in the meantime that this is all happening, Newtown, where the school is just exploded, like a bomb has gone off. And everybody is traumatized. And there are grief counselors and trauma specialists flying in from all over the country trying to help us make some sense of any of it. And while this is all going on, we're just, we can't breathe. And I still have to raise my other child. So I take my son Nate to Lego camp one day in the middle of all of this craziness. And I walk in the door and I see these women and they're talking and they look at me and they stop talking. And then I keep walking and I could have sworn I heard one of them say, "She lost her son at Sandy Hook." Another time I went to the grocery store. I still had to get groceries and I'm shopping and I see this woman. She looks at me. She starts to cry. She goes in the other direction. Most of the time, the conversations in the grocery store, I'd run into somebody I sort of knew, and they'd say, "Hi, Fran, how are you? Oh, my God, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, I don't know what to say." And I'd say, "I don't know what to say." And then they'd say, "I think about you all the time. If there's anything you ever need, we should get the boys together." And I'd say, "I like that. That would be great." And they wouldn't call. And I thought, I just want people around me. One time, I was running a 5K for my son Ben's charity. And I'm doing the run, and I meet this other runner, and he says, "Tell me about your son's charity." And I said, "Well, it's in honor of my son Ben, who died at Sandy Hook School." And he said, "Oh my God, really?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, I remember where I was that day on December 14th. And I thought to myself, please don't tell me where you were that day. I don't want to know. But he did. He did. And he said, "Oh yeah, we were going to have a Christmas party for my company. We heard about all those kids and teachers getting shot, so we canceled the party. We gave all that money to Sandy Hook, and I went home and hugged my kids." It was an awful day. Yeah. I was so pissed at him. I couldn't understand why he would do that. Another time, one day, I was out, and this woman came up to me and she said, "I don't know if you know me, but I'm from Sandy Hook." And I thought, oh God, please, don't tell me. Don't tell me how this makes you feel. I don't want to know. I really don't want to know. And she said, "I happened to be at Starbucks on the morning of December 14th. And I said, "Oh." And she said, "I'm not really in the habit of eavesdropping, but I happened to notice what a beautiful conversation you were having with your son that day." And I thought maybe you'd want to know, or I could tell you that. I said, thank you. And I started to weep and weep. And she said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. And I said, oh no, 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 no. You have no idea what you did. What is forgiveness, Mommy? It's when somebody does something wrong and the other person forgets about it. You know, I've had almost 9 years without Ben. And in that time, I've often imagined what life would have been like if he had survived the shooting. And I bet I would have said something stupid, or put my foot in my mouth, or said too much, or made it about me when I talked to a victim's family. And I get it, because we don't know how to grieve in this country. We don't know how to grieve in our culture. And I'm not mad at those people anymore. I forgive them. Don't let them trademark you. That's a little different. My husband David and I do not have the luxury of not being trademarked by the Sandy Hook shooting because our son Ben died that day. But nobody can trademark my kissing hand, my beautiful conversation at Starbucks, or the 6 years, 3 months, and 2 days that our son Ben lived. Nobody can trademark my love for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Francine. This is Francine's first Mainstage, and we met in the hotel lobby yesterday. She gave me permission to share this, and I shared with her that in some cultures in West Africa, when someone passes away, one of the ways that you keep their memory alive and keep them a part of the family is through storytelling. You tell stories about things that they did, things that they said, and this was a way that people processed grief. And she said, thank you for sharing that, because we don't really have a culture for grieving. And I just applauded her bravery. She's an amazing, phenomenal woman who deserves another round of applause. As do all of the storytellers in the first half. We're already done with the first half. And really, whether it's like the story of a perilous journey to a Warner Brothers meeting on the side of a mountain, or a banker and a bookseller meeting in a dusty store in Karachi, or a story of a mother's enduring and long-lasting love, the power of storytelling to connect human beings through experience and sharing our stories is what the Moth does, and they do it so well. So if you're not a member of the Moth, I invite you at intermission to scan the QR code in your program or text Moth member, all one word, to 71777 so that you can continue to support storytelling just like you've heard here tonight. So we're going to take a quick 15-minute intermission, and we'll see you back here for the second half of the show. So I take up a lot of space, a lot of physical space. I'm 5 feet 11 inches tall. I was 5'10" at the age of 10. Okay. I'm plus size. I like to call myself fun and fluffy. But I also take up a lot of visual space. I am a visibly practicing Muslim woman. And when I move through spaces, as much space as I take up physically and visually, it's hard for me to be seen. When people see me, they see a stereotype. A walking woman who is oppressed. When they see me out with my children, they imagine what my home life would be like. And as stereotypes usually go, they're almost always wrong. And one of the places that I take up the most space is at the airport. They love to see me coming. They put applause on my boarding pass in the form of 7 S's for random screening. When I walk through the metal detectors, I automatically just assume the position. I have been felt up and groped in airports around the world. The bun of mid-back length dreadlocks have been massaged from Indiana to Los Angeles. But I love to travel, and I was especially excited to travel in fall of 2018 because I was going on my very first speaking tour. You see, I'm a public health educator. I am a public health activist. I work with women, women's empowerment, and I was invited on a mini East Coast speaking tour. I was going to be speaking at a mosque in Philadelphia. I was going to be addressing a group of women in Prince George's County, Maryland, and I was even invited as a guest speaker for the Center for Muslim Life at Princeton University. I was really excited, but I knew the trip to the airport was going to be a thing. So I said, okay. If you're going to see me, I'm going to give you something to see. So I tried to look as Muslim as possible. I wore all black. Black underwear. It doesn't matter if they didn't see the underwear. I know that they're there. Black compression socks because I am middle-aged. Hello, blood clots on the airplane. Black abaya, black hijab. And when I pack my suitcases, I usually, in my carry-on, I take my laptop, I take, some vitamin C, some snacks, but this time I decided to put a little something in my bag for TSA. So I get to the airport security screening, and as I'd hoped, they pulled my bag to the side for additional screening. Now, there was a young man behind the monitor. He looked like a young Drew Carey. He had the glasses, the haircut, and there was a very tall man who looked like the brawny man who had had a lot of beers Monday Night Football. He sounded like a little pooch belly. He was fun and fluffy too. He pulls my suitcase, my carry-on suitcase, and he says, "Ma'am, there's something in your bag that I need to screen." And I said, "Okay." He said, "I'm going to open your bag now." I said, "Okay." So he took out the biggest copy of the Quran that I had, because I put it right on the top. He pulled out all of the hijabs, and with his gloved hand, he reached inside and he said, "Ma'am, there's something in your bag that I need to take out." All the blood drained from his face. And I said, "Okay, you can take it out." He said, "I don't want to take it out." I said, "It's okay. You can take it out." He said, "Ma'am, it's slippery." "What is it?" I said, "Sir, that's my vagina model. That's my vagina model. That's an anatomical vagina model. I'm a sexual health educator, sir." The speaking tour that I was going on was to speak at a mosque in Philadelphia to young girls about periods and preparing for marriage and sexual health. I was presenting to a group of women in Prince George's County, Maryland, about orgasms because they call me the orgasm oracle. I was going to Princeton to talk about sexual positivity from an Islamic lens, so I packed my things in my carry-on bag. He said, "Ma'am, there are other things in this bag. I said, take them out. So he took out Vontavious, my cobalt blue silicone penis model. He took out Dion, my neon pink silicone penis model. He took out my strap-on harness. Drew Carey lookalike lost it when he took out the rhinestone-encrusted nipple clamps. There were sex books and other paraphernalia. Now, I take up a lot of space in people's minds, and when you're a Muslim woman who's getting screened by TSA, people look. Like, when I get the pat down, people look. But people were looking that day. They got an eyeful. There was a woman who, covered her newborn's eyes. There were a couple of other Muslim passengers who shot me, disapproving glances. I got some winks. I got a lot of thumbs up. And I really felt good because, I kind of stuck it to TSA that day the way they had been sticking it to me for years. I felt kind of bad because the TSA agent, he was actually really nice. He never took out my vagina model. And it was slippery because I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and silicone toys can fuse together if you don't wash them and cover them with water-based lubricant. So I might have put on a dollop extra, who knows? So he said, ma'am, I'm gonna pack everything back in the bag if that's okay. I said, yeah, sure, that's fine, go ahead. So he closed up everything and he said, ma'am, you're probably really good at your job. I said, thank you, sir. You are too. Thank you. So, welcome back to our second half. My mom said, you always traveling. Where you going to New York City? Where are you going to New York City for? I said, I'm going to church. She was happy. But I didn't tell her I was going to church to talk about dildos. So anyway, sorry. Lord, please forgive me. When I asked our next storyteller, tell us about a time you put your foot down, he said, I'm married with 3 children, and I put my foot down every day. And they walk right past it. Please welcome to the stage, Christian Estevez.
I was born in 1974 in Plainfield, New Jersey, the 4th child of immigrants from the Dominican Republic. In 1974, Plainfield was a place left behind by white flight. By 1974, the law said that if you were white and you lived in a town with black people, you had to send your kids to the same schools. So I grew up in a town surrounded by a sea of boarded up houses. Growing up in Plainfield wasn't easy from the very beginning, but it got a lot harder when I was 9 years old. That was the year that my parents split up. That was the year that my mom moved us to a small apartment on the rougher side of town. Almost immediately, I was initiated into the local gang. The older kids, the teenagers, they would wait in the bushes or around the corner for me to pass by, and they would jump out and pounce on me and punch me while yelling at me to punch back. And they say, punch back, we're gonna make you tough. And this was happening to the other 9 and 10-year-olds as well. We were all learning how to be tough. We were all learning how to survive. We were learning how to take care of each other. in that time, my mom didn't have a lot of time, to be around because she was working 2 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads. So I spent a lot of time out on the street with my boys. It wasn't safe to walk outside of your own neighborhood by yourself, or you risk getting jumped. So we traveled, we rolled deep, we used to call it, meaning we traveled in packs, and the bigger the pack, the safer you were. And we also had to project our power to the kids from the other neighborhoods, so we would let them know that it wasn't safe for them to walk through our neighborhood alone. And this gang that we formed, for our own safety, also created a safe haven for the drug dealers. And as a little kid, I did stuff for the drug dealers, like hold their stuff, because the cops didn't check the little kids. But as the years went on, I was getting bigger, and this was getting more dangerous. And my mom was getting more worried. And when I was 14, she got together with my older brothers, who by this time were old enough to work. And they hatched a plan to pool their money and get us to move all back in together, but in a nicer place. And they got a small apartment in Westfield, a more affluent town a few towns over. And Westfield, like from day one, it was like night and day. Like this place, it was like the place with the white picket fences and the nice shiny school, and the school, the school, it wasn't scary. The streets weren't scary. Back in Plainfield, things were different. In Plainfield, I was one of 30 kids in the classroom that was in crisis. Many of the kids sometimes didn't come to school, didn't eat breakfast before coming to school, or because our parents worked multiple jobs, didn't get the help with our homework, so we didn't have our homework done. And some kids, families couldn't afford sometimes to take their clothes to the laundromat, so you came to school with dirty clothes. Imagine being on a small boat where all 30 passengers fall in the water at the same time, and you have one life preserver. Well, in Plainfield, we were all drowning at the same time. But in Westfield, they had all the energy just for me. So I got access to the programs for the kids in crisis. I got assigned a peer counselor. I got a teacher to be my mentor. I was encouraged to participate in sports, so I joined the wrestling team and the football team. This was how I got my aggression out. But with all of that, it still didn't feel like home. Something didn't feel right. And that really came clear to me on Monday mornings when I would hear about all the parties that happened that weekend that I wasn't invited to and the other students of color were not invited to. And I started going back to Plainfield more often, back to my boys, back to my family. And I continue to be involved in some of the same old things and get into the same old trouble. But somehow I made it through, and I graduated from high school, and I even got into college. But even when I was going to college, I still found myself coming back all the time on the weekends, but especially during breaks when the dorms were closed down and you couldn't stay on campus. And a lot of times I would stay with my friend, crash on the couch of my friend Mikey, who had an apartment with his girlfriend and their baby. And I would stay with him usually because around this time it was hard for me because of my family situation to stay with my mom in her apartment. See, I don't remember exactly how I met Mikey. Like one of those things where it was in my life. When we were really little, we lived in different neighborhoods, so we wouldn't have interacted. But as time went on in Plainfield, the Latino kids started to kind of come together across the city, and we became like one crew. And, me and Mikey, we shared like a similar vision. You know, we wanted to bring people together for us to help each other, while others were just trying to bring us together for trouble. Mikey really cared about me. He showed me all the time because he cared about whether I had a place to sleep. And I worried about him because he was like still completely in this life. I had one foot in, one foot out, but he was still completely in. We both wanted to do better, but we were still in a very dangerous place. And I remember one night during a winter break from college, Christmas time, and I'm staying at Mikey's apartment, and we hear a car rushing down the street towards us, the horn honking. We look out the window to see what's going on, and it's our boy Benji, and he's yelling, "They're chasing me, they're chasing me." So we did what we do, so we ran down the stairs, and we grabbed the baseball bats that we kept by the front door, and we ran out to meet him right when the other cars were pulling up, several cars full of guys from the rival gang. And I ran up to the first car, and I swung my bat, and I broke the driver's side window and just missed the driver's head as he ducked right in the nick of time. And my friends attacked the other cars, and I don't know how long this went on, but eventually they all drove off in defeat, and we celebrated for a second, but then realized that we had to take off too because the cops were going to come, and I had another close call. About a week later, we were at a Christmas party, because at Christmas time there were a lot of parties, and Mike pulled me aside and said, "Listen, man, let's go for a walk. You know, we need to talk." So we go outside, and we're walking on the sidewalk. It's December. It's cold. It's raining. And he's like, "Nah, let's get out of this rain." So we get into his car, and he starts the engine, and he turns on the windshield wipers, even though we weren't going anywhere. And I remember the thump of the windshield wiper as they went back and forth. And I can see the street in front of me clearly through the wipes. And he lit up a cigarette, and he rolled down the window a bit to let the smoke out. And he says, "You know, this isn't working out." He said, "You know, you have a good thing going on, and we're all really proud of you. But if you keep coming back here, you're going to fuck it all up. And we really need you to succeed. We need you to finish what you started and come back here and help for real." And I was like, yeah, you know, I don't want to be that person who turns his back on his friends and just walks away. And he said, "Don't worry about that. I'll take care of that. I'll talk to them. They'll understand." And I'm like, "I don't know, man." And he's like, "Yo, it's time to go." And that's the night that Mikey saved my life. I went back to college, and soon after, a lot of them went to prison. I finished my education. I got my degree, a double major in Latino studies and labor studies. I went to work for the union, and I learned how to organize people for good. And then several years later, I reunited with Mikey, and we put together all the things that we learned to help our community for real. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian, for reminding us, never forget your people, right? Never forget your people. We met Christian through a Moth Global Community Workshop focused on economic mobility and opportunity in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Tonight's show was directed by Catherine Burns, Meg Bowles, Larry Rosen, and Chloe Salmon. And it was produced by Chloe Salmon and Nico Fox. And the Moth's executive director is Sarah Haberman. The Moth would like to thank all of our storytellers, our members, all of you, our wonderful board of directors, our director of development, Inga Gladowski, our manager of membership, Melissa Weisberg. We want to thank Lauren Bokian, Father John, and everyone here at the beautiful St. Anne's Church. Our musician, Sydney Shepard. And our volunteers. We also want to remind you to listen to the Moth Radio Hour on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. and Saturdays at 2 p.m. on WNYC. That's 93.9 FM. And after our last storyteller, we want to invite all of you for a reception in the lobby. So when I asked our final storyteller, tell us about a time that you put your foot down, he said, when my wife and I were dating, we broke up 4 times. Until I put my foot down and said, come on, woman, let's do this. Please welcome to the stage our final storyteller, Shaun Leonardo.
In 2010, I'm in this tiny, dingy gym in Oaxaca, Mexico, finally watching La Lucha Libre. Now, for those of you who do not know, La Lucha Libre is the art of Mexican wrestling. Its pageantry and acrobatics are second to none. And though the narratives and storylines of good versus evil would feel familiar to you, there's a special kind of magic to La Lucha, because it's sacred to Mexican culture. Now, I've always been in complete awe of the spectacle of it all, ever since watching it on TV as a kid with my dad. But those wrestlers, those warriors would feel so foreign to me, and their regalia flipping every which way. But I would later learn that those same wrestlers were your everyday office workers, taxi drivers, janitors, teachers. But in the ring, when that mask was on, they were gods. And as a scrawny kid from some insignificant neighborhood in Queens, I wanted to feel that. I wanted to know what it meant to be a hero. So standing there now, I was in complete awe. So much so that I waited for hours after the event had closed to see if I could approach a promoter and ask if I might start training with the local luchadores. 2 important things to note. I'm not Mexican. Yeah, I'm Latino, but I'm from Queens. And maybe more importantly, at the time, I had 0 wrestling experience. Though I may have fibbed just a little bit and told the promoter that I was a wrestler back home in the United States. Whatever it was, he disappeared backstage and returns with a little piece of paper with an address scribbled on it and says, show up here Friday. He didn't say what time. He just said to show up here Friday, which I did, only 5 hours too early. But I waited. And at one point comes in the trainer, who is the legendary Rigo Cisneros from Nacho Libre fame. And I am besides myself. He approaches me, silently sizes me up and down, and in the quietest of voices says, hop in the ring. Now, the ring is an iron frame with plywood and rubber shavings and an old vinyl billboard strapped on top as a mat. It's not the bouncy thing y'all are imagining. Every time I hit that thing, it was like a mini earthquake set off in my body. And that first day, I was in there with amateur wrestlers twice my size. And every maneuver I tried to do, I was tense and clumsy. And those luchadores saw that and decided to lay in the punishment just to see if I would come back. And so the chops to the chest started stinging a little more, the slams a little more vicious, and the bumps, as we call the falls, that much more aggressive for me than for anybody else. But I did come back the next day and the next day, and I kept coming back. Because where I'm from, giving up is not in the cards. And after 3 months of training, I was granted my first match. And now, due to my hard work and likely the novelty of there being an American luchador, I was slated in as the sub-main event. Now, to be clear, that is not the main event. I'm still a warm-up act. But the night arrives, and it's the same rickety ring in this makeshift arena with metal folding chairs. But the lights and the mariachi music are blaring, and it all feels glorious. They finally call my name, and all the blood runs right out of my body. It all becomes a blur. But I pull myself together, I get psyched, and I enter the arena dressed in all white and gold, the knight in shining armor, with a 14-foot velvet cape. And I'm looking good. And then I get my ass kicked. I lose bad. I'm backstage, beaten, battered. And the same trainer comes over to me and says, go back in the ring, rev up the crowd, and save the good guys. And I panic, but I do what I'm told, only to be annihilated again. By the end of the match, I have one rudo, or bad guy as we call them, pinning my shoulders down to the mat while a second one is repeatedly kicking me, and the third one unmasks me. The ultimate embarrassment in Mexican wrestling. And so I leave with mixed emotions. I'm ridiculed, I'm beat up, but despite the defeat, despite the beating, I feel like I accomplished something great. I've become a Mexican wrestler, for Christ's sakes. I had lived out a childhood fantasy. But I said, enough was enough. The adventure was over. Time to go home. A month later, I'm sitting in my small apartment in Queens when I receive a phone call from one of the promoters asking if I would consider wrestling the welterweight champion of the world. Now, it seems this American luchador had made its mark and audiences were still talking about him. So it would be set as a special event for the 75th anniversary of the biggest Mexican wrestling promotion in the world and staged at the National Museum of Mexico City, which is literally a palace. How could I say no? I'm terrified, but I had to see where I could take this thing, so I accept. Now, my opponent, the welterweight champion of the world, his name is Sangre Azteca, Aztec in blood. I failed to mention that my wrestling name was El Conquistador, the Conqueror. Now, if you know anything about your colonial history, then you know the conquistadores didn't do such nice things in Mexico. It was a match made in heaven. The storyline was set. But upon touching back down in Mexico, I'm explicitly told there's no way I'm winning the match. And then I'm told Sangre Azteca refuses to choreograph the match. Now, if you know anything about wrestling, then you know that outcomes are predetermined and that matches are more or less scripted. So not only am I being forced to lose, but now I could really get hurt. This thing has taken an all too serious turn, and I'm starting to get terrified. Ironically, I'm billed as the good guy, the técnico. But when the night comes and that announcer gets on the mic and screams, "El Conquistador de Nueva York," the crowd immediately turns on me. Now, Mexican wrestling is a family affair, so the abuelas, the grandmothers, all the way down to the kids start cussing me out. It felt like the entire arena wanted to see me massacred. But in front of over 1,000 audience members, Sangre Azteca and I battled for over 45 minutes, mano a mano, one-on-one, 2 out of 3 falls, and we go at it. We are going blow for blow. We're fighting on the outside of the ring. We're putting each other in submission holds. At one point, I get so riled up by the insults from the crowd that I look out to the audience, and then I look down onto my opponent who I just body slammed, and I smack him right in the face. And this is a terrible mistake. Sangre Azteca starts laying it in, the clotheslines and kicks start feeling that much more vicious, the body slams a little harder, the bumps that much more crazy. But I stay in it, and we fight. And for the climax of the match, I climb up to the top rope to try to finish him off with a high-flying maneuver. And I jump. And y'all, it's magical. It's just like I imagined it as a kid. And I'm soaring. Only to get caught off midair with a drop kick right to the chest. And Sangre Azteca pins me for the 1, 2, 3. I lose again. I'm leaving the ring defeated. And I get swarmed by all these kids, asking me for my autograph, embracing me, wanting photographs. It's also surreal, it's bizarre. For a moment, I'm their hero. And I bend down to greet a bunch of kids, and I feel the smallest pat on my shoulder, and a little voice from this little boy that says, "Si se puede." Yes, you can. This boy wanted to believe in this character. And even though I was defeated, he wanted to believe that I should just keep fighting. And I do. I take that childhood fantasy and turn it into an 8-year career. Now, it's been years since I was last in the ring. But of course, I reflect back on my adventures of becoming a luchador all the time. But more than anything else, I remember that little boy's words. Because when things get most difficult, and these last 2 years have been 2 of the most challenging, tragic of my life, of so many of our lives, El Conquistador reminds me that it's not always about winning. It's not about being the hero. It's about moving through the failures and getting up after the losses. Because as that little boy said, that little boy who just wanted to believe, "Si se puede." Yes, you can. Yes, we can. Thank you.
Shaun, I think you're officially the coolest dude in this room. You're the coolest dude in the church, man. I can hear that story over and over again. I can hear all of the stories over and over again. This has been a perfect night of storytelling in a beautiful venue. Imagine a friend of yours that you're going to go home and say, oh my gosh, I went to the show in Brooklyn in this church, and it was crazy, but it was awesome, but it was cool, but it was also like, wow. Imagine how much bigger our Moth family could be. That's what the Moth members do. You support the beauty, the power, the joy, and the majesty of storytelling. Thank you so much for your support of the Moth. Thank you so much for your support of artistry. And thank you so much for being here. Doesn't it feel good to be with people again? It feels good. It feels good. So our night of storytelling is over, but we do invite you to join us for drinks at a reception in the lobby, and we'll also be opening the doors in the back of the church if you wish to exit out the back. Please be safe wherever you're going to your final destination, and we look forward to seeing you at another Moth event in the near future. Good night.